Good day everyone, Grimos here with another DCS video, taking the AJS-37 Viggen out for a spin again. Now in the last video about the Viggen, we went over the more basic weapons for this plane. In this video I want to, as promised, take a look at one of the more sophisticated weapon systems available to the AJS-37, the BK-90 Mjölnir gliding cluster munition dispenser, which probably is one of the most potent air-to-ground weapons in DCS at the moment for player-controlled aircraft, and also fly a quick mission demonstrating the weapon's use in action. Now, the BK-90 was developed originally as a standoff weapon for the AJS-39 Gripen, but the Viggen's AJS upgrade in the 90s incorporated the weapon into the Viggen system as well. The Mjölnir is a lifting body design with small wings as well as fins for navigation, an inertial navigation system as well as a radar altimeter to guide it to its destination, which the weapon will then overfly while firing sub-munitions out of 24 barrels along the side of the weapon. Those can either be 72 high-explosive anti-personnel submunitions, called MJ-1, or 24 anti-tank submunitions with heat warhead and proximity fuse, called MJ-2, or a mix of the two. I usually use the mixed version in this video, so we can see the effect of both submunitions. Now, the submunitions descend on small parachutes, and the heavier anti-vehicle bomblets will hit the ground before the lighter anti-personnel ones, so you got two sets of explosions with the mixed weapons. As with most weapons on the Viggen, the BK-90 is meant for deployment on relatively low altitude and high speed. Release altitude is between 50 and 500 meters above ground, and at speeds between Mach 0.6 and 0.9. And the range depends of course on the speed and altitude at release, as well as the direction of the target seen from your aircraft. The faster and higher, the further the weapon can fly of course. If it has to do a tight turn to the left or right, the range drops. Since it is a gliding bomb, it does not have an engine of its own. Depending on those factors, the range of the weapon is between 3 and 7 kilometers most of the time. I usually fire them low and fast directly at the target, which gives me about 5 kilometer range most of the time. Now, you can fire either single bombs or two at once. When you do that, you have three options available to choose from on how the bombs will release their payload. A long era, wide era and one compact era mode. As the names suggest, the long era means that the two weapons release their bomblets one after another, creating a covered area that is about twice as long as it is wide. The wide area mode is of course the exact opposite. Here the two bombs will overfly the target side by side with a certain distance between them, creating a covered area that is about twice as wide as it is long. And in the third mode, the compact mode, the bombs release at the same spot, creating one smaller but very densely covered area. With those options and some decent mission planning, 3 to 4 Viggens can create a very large area which is covered with submunitions. Even one plane can have a very impressive effect, as a matter of fact. Now, another option you can set is the altitude the bomb travels at, which can be set between 30 and 500 meters above ground, with the standard setting being 60 meters. After launch, the Mjölnir will use its own radar altimeter to stay at the selected altitude above ground till it reaches the target and then goes to attack altitude. This way you can set up the weapon to stay at a higher altitude if there are obstacles in the way the weapon has to overfly. And with a lot of things in the Viggen, you choose all those options by inputting the necessary value at the proper address in the computer of the aircraft. For example, the effect pattern, either long, wide or compact, is set at address 92 in the computer, with value 1000 being the long pattern, 2000 wide pattern and 3000 compact. Now, the Mjölnir navigates via an inertial navigation system, and it gets the target position from your plane's own navigation system before launch. That means for an accurate result, you have to make sure your navigation system is properly aligned and the QFE, air pressure at the target position, is properly set. You can get the QFE at the waypoint from the kneeboard. We will take a look at how to get the QFE if you don't have a waypoint in a later video. Now, the Viggen in the AJS variant has a powerful system called TerraNav, which uses terrain information gathered from the plane's radar altimeter and compares it with information stored in a database to update your navigation system. That is usually enough to keep your waypoints well aligned. But if the nav system for some reason does not work, because you're for example flying over water, you will have to update your nav points manually, so it is helpful if they are placed on an easily spotted landmark. Or alternatively, if you have a good radar picture of the target, you can get fix on the target this way and move your target waypoint over the target using the radar before the attack. Well, that is some basic information about the Mjölnir. Let's take a quick look at a little mission using those powerful weapons and see how they perform in action. Now let me explain the situation and the scenario of this mission while I set up my weapon system. We are coming from Batumi in the south, and the enemy owns most of the territory to the north of that city. However, thanks to our interdiction efforts, they have supply problems and are running low on material and troops. We have reports though that in order to alleviate the situation, the enemy forces have started to supply their troops via ship, landing supplies and troops on the shore. Resistance forces just informed us about such an amphibious landing in progress somewhere at the shore north of Poti, and we are being sent to fire 2 BK-90s at that landing operation and destroy as much of that material as possible before it gets off the beach. We don't have the exact location of the target though, only north of Poti on the shore, so that's where we are going and where our waypoint for the target location is set. Now, as I said, we started from Batumi, and the fastest way to get to the target area would be straight over the water. However, the enemy has a fleet patrolling the waters between Poti and Batumi for just that reason. And that fleet reportedly includes the Moskva, a very dangerous class of cruiser. Even flying very low, water does not offer much cover, and this cruiser is equipped with powerful S-300 as well as OSA anti-air missiles, and a large number of them too. On the other hand, there are reports of several SAM sites in enemy territory on land, but they are mostly older SA-3 Goa and possibly some SA-6. And AA defense at the landing site itself is reportedly light. So we take a detour over land, where we have good cover from enemy ships with their S-300s, and also to arrive at the coast at a roughly perpendicular angle. Now, the road I have chosen is designed to provide maximum terrain masking while flying through enemy territory. Enemy fighters are also possible. We carry 2 sidewinders for self-defense, but I hope I won't run into enemy fighters, since the Viggen is a strike aircraft and not that great of a fighter. Also, fighting other planes would mean having to go higher, which makes one an easy target for SAMs. So the best defense versus fighters in this scenario is to stay fast and low and hope they don't spot you if there are any. Flying over land instead of the direct route over the sea also means that our nav system has a chance to keep our inertial navigation system aligned and counter the drift. However, we don't have the exact target location anyway, so a bit of drift in the navigation system would not matter this much in this case, since we have to get a fix on the target with the radar anyway, and then fix our target waypoint, which is waypoint 5, at the target's location. I already converted waypoint 5 from a standard waypoint to a target waypoint in the computer. That means we can change the location of that waypoint as we please without changing the other waypoints with it. If you change the position of a standard waypoint, the navigation system will assume you want to counter drift in the navigation system and move all waypoints accordingly so that they are still in the same position in relation to that waypoint. That is why it is important to make sure target waypoints really are target waypoints in the computer. Another thing you almost always have to keep in mind in strike missions in the Viggen is the QFE at the target location. QFE is the air pressure at the target, or waypoint or airfield or whatever it is you are looking for. The Viggen will need the more or less correct altitude for most weapons to be accurate, and a barometric altimeter of course uses air pressure to get that data, but the air pressure isn't always the same, so you have to set the correct one. In this case that is no problem though, since the target is right at the coast, so at about sea level, the QFE, pressure at the target elevation, is identical to the QNH, pressure at sea level, which we have in the Newport, and I dialed that one in already. That's an advantage of having a target at sea level, or at least on flat terrain without much altitude difference. If the target would be on hilly terrain, we would have to figure out the target elevation and set the proper pressure at the target on the fly as well if you change target location, which makes things a lot more difficult. Oh, and one little tip here that may or may not be from personal experience. Don't change the QFE while flying at low level with the altitude hold autopilot on. Now, we are by now well within enemy territory, and our radar warning receiver is picking up radars from multiple locations, but so far only search radar and no lock. The route I have chosen should provide good terrain masking for the first part of the route, blocking direct line of sight to possible SAM sites a lot of the time, or so I hope. Now we enter the second part of the journey though, where we turn towards the sea again, and that second leg of the route is more in open terrain, which does not provide as much hard cover. Here a unfortunately placed SAM site might get a lock on us. However, flying low should make it hard for the older SA-3s to hit should they be able to get a lock. So far they still can't. One of the reasons I chose to attack from this side is that my heading, while on the final attack run, is about perpendicular to the coast, since I would expect the targets to be spread out to the side on the beach, so from that angle I can use the wide area mode and hopefully cover as much of the landing site as possible in my strike. Coming from alongside the coast, I could do the same with the long area mode of the weapons, but that would mean flying within range of the Moskva's S-300 missiles, which would most likely not go well. Now we are about to reach waypoint 4, which is the one placed to line us up properly for a wide area mode attack on the target. After we reach waypoint 4, we turn left towards the coast and waypoint 5, our target waypoint. At least more or less. As I said at the beginning, we don't have the exact location of the enemy supply landing yet. We only know it's on the coast north of the city of Boti. We have to find the actual location with our radar and get a fix on it to attack. Luckily, this is pretty easy in this case, since the coast is pretty flat terrain and the cargo ships as well as the heavy weapons on the beach give a nice and easy to see reflection for the radar. The only thing I feared is that I will have to pop up to higher altitude to give the radar a better view to do so, and that would leave us vulnerable to attack by SAMs, at least for a short time. But luckily, the target location is easy to see in this case even from somewhat lower altitude, and I can get an initial fix on it and move the target waypoint to the location of the actual target. I can't fly quite as low as I would like while I play with the radar, since I have limited trust in the altitude hold autopilot I use while studying the radar picture. It uses parametric altitude, so it won't react too fast, but at least I don't have to pop up as high as I feared I would have. So we got our initial fix on the target, but such a preliminary fix at long range is going to be pretty inaccurate. Should we fire our BK-90s on that, we would have a very high chance that the fix is either too far in front or behind the target to be effective. After all, the BK-90 does not have sensors to see the target itself. It detects exactly the position you tell it to, and if that is inaccurate, it will miss. So I want to keep updating the fix on the target as I get closer and as I can switch to a lower range on the radar, which gives me a better resolution and picture of what is going on. The last fix was with the radar on 15 km range, where I could see the difference between the ships in the back and the landed units in front on the beach, and I placed the fix on the units on the beach. And as I get in range, I launched 2 bombs before braking left, so to avoid overflying the target. Now normally I would turn around right away and head back inland low level to avoid presenting a target, but in this case I want to see the effect of my weapons, so I risk flying straight for a bit longer. The bigger MJ2 bomblets explode first, killing some vehicles, and then the MJ1s go off. Well, that looks pretty good. Welcome to Sweden, and I head back home. I follow a similar route I used to get here back home towards Batumi, and the way back home is pretty uneventful. And eventually I land back at Batumi. Well, that was a bit of an overview and a demonstration of the BK-90 Mjölnir standoff cluster bomb dispenser. As I said, potentially one of the most powerful air-to-ground weapons we have in DCS now. However, it also needs a bit of input from the pilot to be accurate. That is especially true if you don't have a preset target waypoint that is already in the right spot. In general, pre-mission planning in the Viggen is an interesting topic as well, and in the next video of the plane I plan to go over how to do that on the fly without preset waypoints from the editor. Till then, I hope it was informative, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.